So drum samples.
I don't do any
You
drum
don't do any
samples.
drum samples. No,
None.
no, no.
None.
So I know it's a big thing, and it's also a point of contention a lot of
I
times
know.
in our community. I see a lot of this conversation. I've been a part of a lot of these passionate, I'll call them passionate debates where drummers kind of get upset because they recorded on said song, da 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 da. It comes in, they hear the mix, and their snare was in their mind replaced, which we know a lot, which I know you don't replace a snare net technically unless it's egregiously like terrible.
Yeah.
You mostly layer and
Layer
build
with
and
build
build and
with
stack to make it kind of cut through a little bit better.
I do that because so much gospel music is so dense. It's hard
Exactly.
to get the drums to cut through the way you want them.
So what would you say to a lot? Is that the basically the message to drummers? Get over it. No, I'm just saying like it's like
No,
no.
I I mean part of the problem on some of the records is the drums just aren't recorded very well in the first place, or
Yeah.
they didn't choose the right snare for the song, or
Yeah.
sometimes that can be the problem too,
Yeah.
or whatever. Each song you can't always have the same snare on every song,
Right. Right. Right.
and um, so when you're doing a production and you're cutting the drums for a song,
Hmm.
if you put up a snare and you cut, let's say you do take one or something, or just not even calling it take one, you're just doing
Yeah.
a rundown,
Yeah.
come in the control room and say and listen to all the elements that are in that rhythm track. Does that snare and do those toms fit into this song?
Yeah.
You know, well, and it's mostly the snare.
Yeah.
Um, in you know, drummers have their cymbals and things that they use, but like in Nashville, the studio drummers, when they come to the studio, they'll bring 12 different snare drums.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so you have to have an arsenal. As a drummer, you have to have an arsenal of snares
Yeah.
if you're going to fit in with any given song, and and it and it's a the decision is between you and the producer and slash possibly the engineer, or it's usually a combination of those three people that decide, does this fit in with this song?
Right.
So
Right.
pick the right snare, record it properly,
Yeah.
make it sound the way you want it
Yeah.
as you're printing it to Pro Tools or whatever
Right.
DAW you're using, or if you're using analog, whatever. Pick the snare that fits the song,
Yeah.
and then you won't have to do as much later,
Yeah.
and get a clean sound in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, I've made records where I don't have any samples because I recorded the drums from the
Exactly. Yeah.
beginning, and we got the sound and we built the track around that sound.
Right.
That's the other thing. Build the track around the drums,
Yeah.
you know?
You were saying that earlier with when you was mixing when you first started mixing the song that you was mixing. And you was like, yeah, if I can get the drums where I need them, then I can build everything else around
Yeah.
that. It's just that was like the focus, because you knew it's like this is where the impact is going to be, and I stack around that.
Yeah.
But what would you say to the guys that say, because like here's the common argument that I hear, and I want to present it to you because you are the one that's the most qualified to answer it.
I don't know
I
if
really believe this. The common argument is this. This is the common accusation, I'll say, is that gospel, I hear this all the time. Gospel engineers are lazy because they, instead of making a drum sound good, they just slap samples on it and just send it out. That's the common accusation that I hear. Gospel engineers are lazy. I see it once a week, at least once or twice a month, maybe. I'm scrolling on Facebook, Instagram, wherever, and it's some guy, some drummer, that some record that just came out, and they didn't hear the snare that they thought that they recorded or whatever. It doesn't sound the way that they thought it, and then they start throwing that accusation around. These guys are just lazy. They keep throwing these samples. So
But so that particular person, let's just say, did they really think it sounded that great when they listened to playback in the control room? I don't know.
I don't
But
think.
I know that half the time when I get drums in, they don't sound good in the first place.
Wow.
They're not recorded well.
Yeah.
You know, that, you know, a lot of these guys are just running these things through, what are these a lot of the churches will have these
Oh, the
32 bus.
X32s.
Yeah. And then they don't print any EQ or anything
Yeah,
to
they
it. And so,
It's just raw drums, just regular
right.
drums.
But did they tune the drums correctly? So like if you do a session in Nashville with session drummers,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, most of the time, like a drum tech will come in
Yep.
and tune all the drums
Yep.
and make them perfect
Yep.
before the drummer even gets there,
Yep.
and change the heads
Yep.
and make sure they're perfect.
Yep.
And they'll have 12 snare drums, and then they pick the right snare. And so long as you're going through a great preamp
Mm-hmm.
with a great EQ, like say for instance, when I record, I always use Neve preamps on my drums, as if they're available,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I know what those EQs do, and I know how to tweak the sound so that it sounds as close to a record as possible before I ever add a sample to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we pick the right snare that fits the song at the time of the recording. And then usually it'll make it through the process.
Yeah.
Unless all of a sudden they put in a million tracks, and then somehow you got to make it a little bit bigger to cut through all that.
That's different.
But in general, if it's recorded properly in the first place, then you can get that sound. You can get that natural sound if you want it.
Yeah.
It can be done. But most of it's not because we're lazy. We're trying to fix something that's not right in the first place.
Wow.
Now, sometimes we get drums in and they sound pretty good, and we can use it.
Yeah.
90% of it, and we just maybe add a little bit to it for ambience or something.
You called me in like maybe what was it? I think it was earlier today, and you was like, "Hey, listen to this," and it was because the drummer was using a side snare thing.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Listen to it, like without this has no samples on it. Listen, it sounds great."
Yeah.
I used that. He said, "Now this one part, because he was doing it in a place where it didn't make sense, I added a sample on there just to make
it a little bit bigger in that one
part.
section, just one part.
But the rest of the song,
it was the real snare.
It was the real snare.
Exactly. But it was just the song got bigger, but the drum didn't get bigger for that part of the song.
Makes sense.
And it couldn't get through it. It didn't have the weight to get through that much information.
Yeah.
But I liked the sound of that snare.
Yeah.
They actually picked the right snare, but just in one spot, it wasn't quite right. So I enhanced it a little bit. It still had the same tone as the original.
Yeah.
So, are we lazy? I don't know. We're just trying to make the best thing we can. And look I fail sometimes. I admit that.
Yeah.
I don't
think we all do.
Sometimes, I'm not happy with the mixes sometimes. A lot of times, I can hardly listen to anything I do.
Yeah, we were going to lunch, and some song came on that you had mixed, some big song.
And I don't want to hear that.
Like, turn it off. I want to hear that. It's like, that's the biggest song she's ever done. That's her claim to fame. I don't want to hear it. You mixed it. I don't want to hear it. But it's that I think I wanted you to say it because it needs to be said to really understand, because like guys like me, I'm still building real clout. I don't know if you want to call that with people, whatever. Some people call it that. But I'm still building like relationships with people. So I say these same things that you said a billion times. I remember I was having a conversation with a guy once, and I said, "Look, man," because he was going on and on, moaning and moaning about, "That's not my snare. When I record it, that's not the snare that I use." And I just simply said to him, I said, "Man," I said, "if you care that much about your drums, I said, you need to be in the group chat, in the whatever's going on when the producer is having conversations with the engineer." I said, because if it made it to the radio, if it made it to Apple Music or whatever, it's not because the engineer said, Thank you for sending me this record. I don't want to hear nothing else you guys got to say ever again. This is my record, and when next time you hear it, it's going to sound the way I want it for it to sound. No,
never do that.
It got there because probably mainly the producer or the label or whoever's the head of that production said, "That's it. This is the song. This is it." It probably got replaced because the producer said, "I'm not, the snare doesn't sound blah, 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 blah. Can you do whatever to it to make it cut through or whatever?" Yeah. I know that's how this works.
It does.
I know this is
Totally.
how this works, but the common knowledge is they think that once it leaves their desk or whatever they did to it, they think that that's final, and it shouldn't be changed or it shouldn't be shifted or it shouldn't be. But they lose contact with whoever the creative lead is, and the next time they hear it is when it's on the radio or when it's on whatever, and they hadn't really put that much
Yeah.
into it.
And first of all, the snare or the kick or all this other stuff, none of that's as important as the vocal,
It's the
anyways.
vocal. You know what I mean?
And I mean, unless it's a jazz record,
Yeah, that's a
then
whole
it's
different.
whatever the focal point of the jazz record is,
It
or
makes
whatever.
so much sense, and I think that's the thing that I see. I mean, I see it so many times, and I've had this conversation so many times, and I've told them the same. That goes back to what you were talking about, recording with the end in mind. Like if you know a good drummer knows, a good recording drummer knows this is what this should sound like. This is the right snare. This is how the drum should be
Yeah.
tuned. This is what the vibe is. This is what the whatever. And they tune for that. They pick the right snare. They pick the right whatever. They know what how to dial in the EQ. They know how to dial in the preamp to
Yeah.
get that sound, to get that tone or what have you. But if you don't know those things, and you're just recording through a Behringer, through an X32, through a M32, whatever 32, and
Yeah.
insert there. If you're recording through that thing, and then you send those files off, and you didn't do anything to them, you didn't clean the toms yourself, you didn't do any of those things, then you're subject to the next person that gets those files to do with them what they please.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been my perspective on it, but having you say it, because I think a lot, I'll be honest, I think a lot of the controversy of it centers around a lot of the mixes that you've done, and that's the assumption that they make, thinking that you're just, but we know that, but I think that it's just always been hilarious to me when I see those comments on
I feel
something like
bad
that.
that they think that way. I don't know how to. I try to please everybody.
Yeah.
Especially with drummers, I try to get all their nuances as well as I
Ghost
can.
notes, all
Ghost
those
notes
things.
and things like that, if I can. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm searching for that stuff.
But it goes back also to what you were saying before. I think another big solve for the issue is what you were saying, and as the crux of it all is the arrangements of things. When you have a dense arrangement, when you're trying to get a snare to cut through 42 tracks of aux and 25 percussion tracks
It's rough.
and 40 background vocals, and then like you said, the most important thing is the lead vocal,
Yeah.
and you're trying to get the drum just to have some presence through all of that stuff that's sucking up all
All
of the
that
frequency.
it's sucking up all the frequencies. Yeah.
All of the aux is just sucking up all of the frequencies, and it's like where's the room for it? So the only thing you can do to get it to cut up is just cut through, is to just drop this really bombastic like
Yeah.
snare
Sometimes you
room
have to. Yeah.
sample to get
Right.
it to cut through.
Yeah. It's so that you can turn it. You make it big, and then you can turn it down
Yeah.
so that the vocals will cut through.
Yeah.
And whatever the instrumentation that needs to cut through.
I think that's really, really good.